episode of Dimitra's Dishes. Today we're going to be making Spanakopita Horiatiki. This is another delicious spinach pie recipe, but there's not going to be any cheese or any eggs in it or any dairy for that matter. And it's going to be made with a homemade Horiatiko style dough. Horiatiko just means from the country. It's going to be made with such simple and basic ingredients. And it's great if you don't have any Phyllo pastry on hand. Right now we're going through a quarantine, so there's lots of things that we do not have and we do not feel like running to the supermarket for. But all you need is a handful of ingredients to make this pastry, some fresh spinach and herbs, and you will be good to go. Let's go over the ingredients so we can start. So for the filling, we're going to need an onion that has been finely chopped with some olive oil, 2 pounds of spinach, or you could use a combination of your favorite greens, some fresh mint. This is a little bit of semolina flour, some dill. This is dry dill. You can use fresh dill if you prefer. Salt, pepper, 2 garlic cloves, good quality extra virgin Greek olive oil. We're going to need some lemon juice. This is the pastry that I've already made. I'll go over how I made it in a minute. And then for the filling, we also need some fresh parsley and some scallions. For the dry ingredients, you're going to need some all-purpose flour and some salt. The exact measurements are going to be on the website. And the wet ingredients, you're going to need a little bit of vinegar. You can use lemon juice instead, some water, and some olive oil. Now I'm making this in my tabletop mixer just because it keeps my hands free and it's just so much easier. If you don't have one, you could definitely knead this dough by hand. What you're going to do is you're going to put all of the wet ingredients, which are the olive oil, the water, and the red wine vinegar, into your mixing bowl. Then go ahead and whisk up the flour and the salt and add it to the mixer and let it knead for 8 to 10 minutes or until you're left with a really soft and smooth dough. If it's too sticky, you can go in and add a little bit more flour. Don't add too much because you don't want it to be too dry. You just want it to be smooth but not sticky. Once the dough is done kneading, transfer it to a big bowl, cover it with plastic wrap, and leave it aside and let it rest for 1 to 2 hours. That's going to help it roll out very easily. Now the good thing about this dough is that you can make it 2-3 days ahead of time and keep it in your refrigerator. That makes it so easy if you're planning ahead. Now we're going to move on to making the filling. So to the frying pan, I've added the onion and some olive oil. So I did 1 large onion because originally when I was testing this recipe, I had a small onion and 2 leeks, but since I don't have leeks on hand, right now I'm just using a large onion, so that's fine too. So I have an onion with about a 1/4 cup of olive oil in here. You want it to cook on medium heat for about 6 to 8 minutes or until the onion is nice and soft and golden. In the meantime, go ahead and thinly slice the scallions. I have a bunch of scallions that I'm using. About 5 to 6 scallions is what you're going to need. You can chop them all the way up down to the white part, thinly slice it, then go ahead and finely chop the parsley, set it aside, and finally chop the mint. Also grate the garlic so you have it ready. Now that the onion is nice and soft, I'm going to add the scallions and I'm going to let them cook for about 2 to 3 minutes or until they soften a little bit. At first, it's going to look like all of those greens are not going to fit in the pan, but definitely add them a little bit at a time, and as they wilt, you're going to keep adding more greens. If your pan is too small, then you can just keep wilting them down and just emptying the greens and the onions into a big mixing bowl and just do it in a few batches. But this is what it should look like. It's still going to be juicy, but not too much liquid should be in the pan, just like this. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and transfer it to my mixing bowl. And we're going to add the greens. So the parsley and the mint is going to go in. And I don't have fresh dill, so I'm going to use a heaping tablespoon of dry dill. If you're using fresh dill, then use a 1/4 cup of freshly chopped dill. Mix everything all together, and oh my God, does it smell so good. I'm going to add some black pepper. Now this is totally up to you, however spicy you like it. I'm also going to season with a little bit of salt. And then I'm going to add the juice of half of a lemon. Lemon and spinach go so well together, especially when there's no cheese in the filling. So if you wanted to add cheese, you definitely could. Then I would just leave out the lemon. Mix everything all together. Oh, it smells amazing. And you can put the juice of the whole lemon. Taste it and see how it is. If you want more lemon juice, go ahead and add it. I'm going to give this a taste to see if it needs more salt. So fresh tasting. To me, it's perfect. At this point, I'm going to add the semolina flour. Now, if you don't have semolina flour, you could use panko breadcrumbs. You could even use a couple tablespoons of couscous. That's fine too. Mix everything all together. And just like that, the filling is ready. You want to set this aside and you want it to cool to room temperature. Before we roll out the dough, let me say that if you have frozen spinach on hand and that's all you have, you can definitely use that. It's already cooked, so you don't have to cook it. But what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to thaw it out completely and set it in a colander to drain. And not only that, once it drains, you also want to take a handful at a time and squeeze out as much of the water as you can. You want to make sure that that water does not get into your pie filling, because if it does, it's going to make the bottom of the pie and even the top soggy instead of crisp, and that's not what we're going for. So if you have frozen spinach, feel free to use that. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take the dough out of the bowl, and I'm going to sprinkle some flour on my work surface, and I'm going to cut it into 2 portions, form it into a circle. So form it into a circle and press it out to a bigger circle with your hands. Let me put this dough on the side. This dough is so soft and pliable. It's perfect. Sprinkle some more flour on top, and we're going to roll it out about 14 to 16 inches in diameter, because I am going to be using this dish right here to bake my spinach pie in. This is a 12-inch square baking dish. Traditionally, these are made in round baking dishes, but I don't have one, so I'm using what I have. You can also use a 9 by 13-inch baking dish. So to keep the shape, and it really doesn't matter because we don't really need it to be round. I actually need it to be square. I want it to be about 2 inches bigger than my pie pan. That looks good. You want it to be bigger than your dish, so I'm just going to roll this onto my rolling pin, add a little bit of flour to it so that way it doesn't stick. And if you've let the dough rest long enough, it's going to be very easy to roll out. So go ahead and roll this up. And before I add it into my dish, I'm just going to drizzle some olive oil in here and just brush it all around. And I'm going to transfer the dough to the dish right here. And you just want to make sure that the dough is lining the whole pan on the inside. It's okay if there are some wrinkles of dough. That's actually going to make a lot of nice texture to the bottom of the crust, and it's going to be really good. The bottom crust is ready. Now I'm going to add the filling to it. And just go ahead and spread it out. Now at this point, if you wanted to crumble some feta cheese on top, you could, but I'm going to keep it vegan and leave it just like that. I'm going to roll the top portion out now just the way we did the bottom, but the top portion is not going to be as big. I'm just going to leave it so that we can just cover the top of the filling. That looks good. I'm going to roll it up again, put a little bit of flour on top of that, roll it onto the rolling pin, and transfer it to the top of the pie. And now you're just going to take the edges and you're going to stick them together basically. And now we're just going to roll them just to create a decorative edge. Now we're just going to brush some olive oil on the top. And I'm just going to poke some holes on top so that way the steam escapes easily. My oven is preheated to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. This is going to bake on the center rack until the whole thing is beautifully golden brown and the top is nice and crispy. That should take about an hour. I'll show you what it looks like as soon as it comes out. So the spanakopita is ready. It baked for an hour and 10 minutes. Now if you're going to bake it in a bigger pan, then it's going to bake a little bit quicker because the filling is going to be thinner and the top is going to be wider also, so it's going to cook much faster, probably in an hour. Keep an eye on it. As soon as it's golden brown, take it out. Let it sit at room temperature for 15-20 minutes before you cut into it. Then if you baked it in a square dish like I did, you can get about 9 pieces out of it, 9 main dish serving size pieces out of it. I'm going to go in and take a bite. But before I do, let me say that you could definitely freeze this if you're making an extra batch. Before baking it, just put it in the freezer. Once it's set, wrap it tightly in plastic wrap and leave it in there. And then you can just bake it just the way we did, straight from the freezer whenever you're ready. It is time to take a bite, and it's still pretty hot, so I have to be careful. The crust is crispy and it's also very crumbly and tender. The filling is so moist and flavorful from all of the herbs. Again, you can definitely put some feta cheese in here if you want. Serve this as is or with some lemon wedges. If you're not keeping it vegan, you can serve it with some tzatziki on the side. Head on over to the website, www.dimitrasdishes.com. Print this recipe out. Let me know what you guys think, and if you have any special requests of what you want to learn how to make next, post them in the comment section down below. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. I'll see you all next time. Yes, yes.